Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected enemy Shaitan. With Allah's name, the most merciful benefactor, the most merciful redeemer. All praise is due to Allah alone. We seek His help, and I bear witness that there is no deity except Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to whom the Quran was revealed 1400 years ago, is his messenger, his messenger to mankind, his servant. Today, my beloved Muslims, we find many things going on in the world, and sometimes so many things are going on in the world we can't seem to focus on that which is important. So we're going to look a little today in terms of focusing on the very important aspects that Allah has in this creation for us to focus on. First, we want to talk a little bit about Fatiha, the opening of the Quran. Almost all Muslims know the Fatiha in and out in terms of what it's saying in the Arabic. And those that don't know the Arabic, they know the English, what it's saying. But we want to talk a little bit about what it is saying, the meaning of what it is saying. Not just what it's saying, the meaning of what it's saying. There's a portion in the Quran, a portion in that Fatiha, when we say, guide us along the straight way, talking about the Sirat al-Mustaqim, and not the way of those who've gone astray. And Da'aleen is the term we use for that. It's, we think, I've heard it expressed, that when we say that, we're talking about other religious groups, such as the old Christian groups, other old Jewish groups, or even Muslim groups. But actually what it is really talking about is talking about humanity. It's talking about humanity. When Allah created this creation, He created everything. And what's so beautiful about it is that everything is locked in. Everything is locked in. Even though we sometimes think we are not locked into this creation to the point where we have to follow the guided, the outline, the way it's outlined, we think maybe we could change it. But actually, that's part of the creation. It's locked in. It's locked in that man has the ability to change things. That's locked in. Man is not locked into the creation. The creation is locked into the power of man. The power which Allah has given man. The creation must obey the sun, the moon, the stars, the angels, the malaika, everything was made submissive to man. So it's locked in. It's locked in, and we're locked in to our nature. Our nature. When Allah created the human being, He made no mistakes at all. None whatsoever. Everything was perfect. Everything was perfect. The human being, when we evolved, it was in perfection. Now, we've heard many times that we've made many references in terms of man's evolution. See, we get so focused on the physical evolution. Sometimes we're so focused on the physical evolution, we misunderstand it altogether based on the different philosophies that people have come up with over the years. But the evolution that Allah is stressing in the Quran is the evolution of us humanly, spiritually, intellectually. That's the power. The intellectual growth and development of the creature he called the Khalifa. That's the evolution. And as long as that creature, man, this entails male and females, children, everyone, as long as that creature follows the dictate or the nature in which Allah has created that creature, he will come to his Lord. To his Lord. You know, there's a ayat in Quran where Ibrahim was trying to fathom. He was trying to think about how could the dead be raised. Ibrahim was questioning. His mind was going. He was trying to figure things out. Allah told him to take some birds, train them, put them on different mountains, different mountaintops, and call to them. In that lesson to Ibrahim is a lesson for us. That in the nature of the creature is going to obey that nature. The human being is in our nature, in our makeup, we will return to Allah. We don't need any books to do that. We don't need any prophets to do that. We will do that. The reason we need the books, the reason we need the prophets, is because we also have something in our nature which means we can change things. And as soon as some of us get strong enough to change something, we change it. And Allah also knew that. So Allah knew that man was going to change the course of things that Allah had prescribed already. In order for those who are obedient to their nature, Allah gave us Quran, gave us prophets, gave us messages to help us to be guided on that nature which is in us. Haven't you ever looked in terms of history, in terms of geography, archaeology? In high school and college, they talk about people from all different parts of the world. All different parts of the world, some not yet civilized, some civilized as we are. But no matter what part of the world they talk about, the different people with the different philosophies and different ways they came into existence, almost everyone categorically have a belief in God. Every civilization. Those who were cannibalists had a belief in God. That was part of their makeup. Those who killed, those who ravished, those who stole, those who conquered had a belief in God. Now, they may have a belief in God, doesn't mean they follow the nature in which Allah had created them. That nature first is the belief. They had that. That's what you do. That's what we do. When we say Allah, La ilaha. When we say Allah, when we say there is no deity, that's what we are saying. They were saying the same thing. They wasn't using Allah, but they accepted the fact that they believed in something greater than themselves. And even those who made images of themselves out of what they said they believed, they still believed in that as being God. Which is proof that the human being in our own nature is to believe in a deity. It's in our nature. There's nothing we can do about it as human beings. There's also something else in our nature. The human being has in our nature, to be humane. Bashir is a word. In English, we talk about human. Man is the real meaning there of, when you look at the word human, you see two parts. You see, first part is hu, and the second part is man. Man references the thinking creature, Homo sapien. The part that thinks. The part that can change the creation with his hands, with his mind. And the hue in that word comes from a term which we talk about colors and shapes and things of that nature, hue. Hue means to change the patterns of things, soften them, harden them, is hue. H-U-E. So, human is talking about the thinking creature becomes really a creature that Allah has blown his life into, his ruh into. He becomes really, when he starts to think of others than himself. He would think of others than himself, others' well-being than his own well-being. He leaves the selfishness to become human. As long as he's selfish, he's not human. Because human requires the fact that you have to feel for others. That's part of the characteristic of being human. That's part of the definition. Without that, you're not human. You're thinking. You're intellectual. All of those things, but without that ability to feel for others, we're not human. And we got that human essence when Allah breathed his ruh into us. Now I know we're beyond the idea of just thinking that's talking about air going into your lungs. No, you have to be way beyond that. We're way out of that. That's almost like when we first starting to think. Because all creatures that breathe have air in their lungs. And those who live under the ocean, they bring oxygen out of the water into their gills, those who have gills, and bring that oxygen into their body to utilize like we use oxygen when we breathe in our lungs. So all creatures live like that. That's not the ruh that Allah is talking about. What Allah is talking about, the ruh, he's talking about what gives us life, what makes us human, as opposed to just being a living creature. And many of us, you walk around with that ruh. When we call ourselves Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Malik, Hassan, all those are attributes, all those are the ruh. All those is what gives us life. If you lived any of the attributes that you have, no matter what it is, if you live that, try to fulfill that, you'll be as human as any other creature could possibly be. Because that's the ultimate. Those are the attributes of Allah. He put that possibility in each of us. Now, when the angels saw this, the angels said, whoa, what a wonderful creation. What a wonderful creation. Created a creature with all these qualities that will have the qualities that Allah has put into our nature to be human, to build a beautiful world. And then Allah showed them the world after the shaitan has influenced them. Then the angels say, well, in that world, I don't see how anybody can exist. It's impossible for them to make it in that world. Then Allah says, I know what you know not. Now, most of us, when we think about that scenario, we think in terms of a creature coming and affect us. But no, this is talking about man. This is talking about the human being as we evolve. We evolve and do certain things. And one of those things we do, we get arrogant. And Allah warns us against arrogance. Because arrogance is a characteristic which makes us believe we are supreme, which makes us believe we are greater than anything else or anyone else. And only Allah is greater. Only Allah is bigger. Human being is not bigger. But that surfaced in man's evolutionary growth. And where do we see that at? We see it in the Fatiha. We see it in the Baqarah. We see it in the ayahs that Allah talks about how man evolved. And he talks about how the jinn said to Allah, when Allah told the malaika to make sujood to man. Now at that time, the jinn was a malaika. When the jinn is obeying his nature and doing exactly what Allah created him to do, he's malaika. When the human being obeys his nature and doing exactly what he's supposed to do, he's malaika. Malaika means total obedience to Allah. Total obedience to Allah. And when Allah created this creation, he put that force into motion. He put that into action. And that force that causes all the physical world and all the emotional world to come into existence and to sustain itself is the malaika. The force that executes the creation. That Allah commands to do that. And at one time, no, at all times really, until he changes, the jinn is part of that. The jinn didn't create itself. The jinn was created by Allah. The human being didn't create itself, created by Allah. And the jinn nature is part of that nature which Allah had created within the human being, so that the human being can experience this physical world, so he can develop in this physical world to the utmost, because it's that jinn nature, that feeling, the feeling emotions that drives the human being. Everything you and I do, almost all of it is driven by emotions. Even when we're voting for a president, it's driven by emotions. We either like them or don't like them because of something they said or didn't say. We think they're going to help us or not help us. That's all emotions. We have no facts of any of that. We have no facts about anything helping us. But we have emotions. We believe. So that nature, the emotional nature, Allah calls it the jinn nature. And the jinn nature thought at one time it was better than the nature that Allah had created in man to be humble. The humble part of the human being. The jinn said, I am the best part of the human being. In that ayah where the jinn says, I'm better than he, that's one terminology, but it actually is saying, I'm the best part to come from him. I'm the best part to come out of man. So the jinn is saying to Allah, you created me, but why would you let the humbleness, why would you let the basira of the human being lead? Why shouldn't I lead? I'm the emotions. I'm the one to tell man that he can fly. I'm the one to tell man no matter the world, everybody else is saying the world is flat, believe it's not flat, walk out there and see if it's not flat. I'm the one to tell man to get up in the morning and go do something. I should lead. I'm the best part of the human being. That's what the jinn was saying. I am the best part of the human being, and the human being cannot exist without me. He would never move forward. He would stay in one spot. He would be rooted like the tree out there in the forest. He'd be like a rock in the woods. He would never move without me causing him to move, without me getting him up in the morning and say, go, do it, you can do it. Don't believe anything anybody say, just move on. So the jinn was making his argument. And his argument was that this is the best part of the human being because I move him. And at that moment, Allah called that jinn nature arrogant. Arrogant to even come up with a thinking that Allah didn't know what is the best part. That you know more than Allah what's the best part, what should lead the human being. His intellect wasn't even saying anything. The intellect didn't even speak out. It's the jinn nature that spoke. And Allah said to the jinn nature, you arrogant. And then the jinn nature then got angry. Said, look, I'm going to prove that I'm the best part. And if you allow me to exist until the day of judgment, until the day of resurrection, I will show you that all those who call themselves humble can be changed. I will come at them from the right. I will come at them from the left. I will come at them from the Sirata Mustaqim. And Allah says, anyone who follow you, you can have them. This is why the world is being led by emotions. And this is why people who try to control the world control it through emotions. Because they know that's an open area. They know that Allah has given them that freedom. Allah has told them, tells them in the Quran, you can have all you can get. So they develop these emotional schemes to drive men in different directions, to control men, because they know they have the freedom to do so. You know, one of the biggest schemes in the history of man took place about 71 AD, about 71 years after the time they say Isa was on the earth. And one of the schemers, this is history, this is not myth. This is not prose, this is not writing. This is history. You can look this up in history. One of the ones who had the scheme that controlled this world that you live in, right now, this world that we live in is controlled by a philosophy that was developed over 1700 years ago. And the one who engineered it, his name was Flavius Josephus. His name was Flavius because he had been taken into the Roman Empire by that family who controlled Rome and the world at that time. But he was a Jew. Josephus is a Jewish name. He was a Jew and he was big. His family was big in Judaism. His family was big in Hebrews. And what the world was in at that time was Rome versus the rest of the world, because it was controlling most of the world. And the biggest agitators in Rome's world were the Jews, were the Hebrews. See, Hebrews was existing before Rome ever tried that. See, during the time when Allah had revealed the Torah to Musa, and the Torah was guidance for the people who accepted the Torah. And that guidance told them that Allah is not a man. It told them that Allah is not a creature to be worshipped. It's not a statue. Because you remember during the story of Ibrahim, when Ibrahim broke up the statues, got them out of that. I mean, that civilization was no longer like that. That civilization was no longer believing in statues of being a deity. And what the Romans did, and the Greeks also, what the Romans would build statues of themselves. Because you remember your history. The Roman civilization was one of the civilizations where they deemed that Caesar was God. Like Pharaoh did it in Egypt. Caesar, the whole family said, we are the deity, we are the God. And they had to get voted in by the rest of the Roman Empire that they are a deity. And they was looked on as a deity. So their statues were put all around the Roman kingdom. And when they were put in Judea, other places where the Jews were in control, they wouldn't accept it. Because they didn't believe in it. So they had to be controlled by another way. Why? Because at that time the Jews was a warrior nation. The Jews were fighters, rebels, while the Romans were concerned. You know, there's a word that they use in their scripture called the Messiah. Now, most of us see the Messiah the way it's been projected today, but the way it come out of Jewish history, the Messiah, the word means like a savior. It means one who's come to save the people. It's like a leader. They would anoint men to be messiahs. This is what the Jewish people would do. They would anoint somebody to be the Messiah, to be the leader, to help the people out of a jam or fight them against their foes. Rome couldn't use a people like that. Because every time you look around, they were doing something to bring down the Roman Empire. So they had to come up with another philosophy. They had to come up with another way to rule. They just could not rule them no longer with soldiers marching all through the fields. That's just too much money. Too much money to build up these great armies to come against people and try to hold land. You see what's happening in the world today? Look how America complains about, hey, look, we can't keep going into these countries and trying to hold these countries down. That's too much money. For us to put soldiers over there and maintain all those countries? No, we got to figure out another way to do that. And the way they're thinking about is the same concept that Josephus used against the Jews. And that concept was, Josephus was a historian. Josephus was a writer. Josephus was a master at language. And he was a Jew. And he fought for the Jews. One of the greater fighters for the Jews. And then when the Flavius family of Rome brought him into their fold, he rebelled against the Jews. He became a worker for the Romans. He became what they call hypocritical, a turncoat. And what they asked him to do was come up with a way to master over the Jews. So what he did, he would write all about the history of all the wars that the Jews and the Romans were having. And you can go to the library and get this history. And he wrote in that history a story about who we call Esau. He used that story. But he backdated the story and put it into his book and made Esau the Messiah for the coming to save the Jews. But in the whole text about Esau, he wrote about Esau being passive. Esau was not a warrior. Esau was turning the other cheek. Esau was saying, give to Caesar what's Caesar, and give to God what's God. That's the philosophy. He wrote that. He wrote this scheme to captivate the mind of the Jews so they would follow the Romans. It wouldn't be argumentative, wouldn't be warriors. They become pacified. But the Jews did not accept that. The Jews would not accept the concept. This is why you read where they said they wouldn't go along with it. So then what the writers did, Josephus, they wrote in that story, that the Jews caused Jesus, the Messiah of the Jews, and man to be crucified. So now the world is going to grow up being anti-Semitic. Why? Because they don't think in their subconscious mind that they killed Jesus. So now they're going to always have something against the Jews. And when Josephus and they was putting this together, that was part of their whole scheme. You see, but the key is, it was a scheme. And by it being a scheme, Allah exposed it in the Quran. The Christians today, they follow what they call Jesus, Isa, the son of Miriam. Allah put it in Quran that Isa and his mother, Miriam, was a sign. Now, when you read that, you're reading an ayat, which means sign. The ayat is a sign. But he's saying in that ayat, these two are a sign. So we should read that with more significance in terms of looking what's in the meaning of this, rather than just the literal talk of it. And then Allah says in the Quran that Isa was not crucified, exposing that lie. He exposed the lie right in the Quran. That the lie that Josephus told. The lie that Josephus wrote about in his text, which was later adopted as part of the Gospels. The Jews never accepted it. The Jews never accepted any of that stuff that Josephus was writing. But another community came along and accepted it. And that community accepted at Antioch. And at Antioch, that's when they were first called, you are the first to be called Christians. The Jews weren't called Christians. Where did they get this stuff? They said from Paul and Peter. Where was they getting the information from? All the Gospels where Paul and Peter was supposedly writing, and Mark and Luke, Josephus was the one who was writing. It's all in Josephus' manuscripts. And his manuscripts are known in the world. It's just that most people don't read it. Most people don't go check it out. But Allah encourages us as Muslims. Allah says that was a scheme. Isa was never crucified. They did not kill Isa. Now that has to make you think. You can't just say, oh, Allah said it didn't happen. Where's your Ibrahim thinking? Where's your Ibrahim attitude? Ibrahim checked things out. Ibrahim studied things. Ibrahim went trying to find out, what is this thing? What is this way people are thinking? What is this meaning here? Even after he came into contact with his Lord, he still was asking questions. So when Allah says in the Quran that Isa was not crucified, where is our study? See, when we study these other texts, now we can find that information. See, I don't believe at the time that that was revealed that all the Muslims knew about Josephus. But today, you can go to your computer and type in Josephus. It comes up. Then you read his manuscripts, read what he was talking about. So, oh wow, this guy said this before that. That was a scheme. And the world we live in right now is a world of schemes. A world of schemes. It's driven by schemes. This is why you find people so easily manipulated. Because those at the top, they know it's nothing but a scheme. Those at the top know they're not talking about God. They're talking about managing the mind of men. Those of you who have ever seen the movie called The Matrix, if you haven't seen it, you should rent it and look at it. It talks about the mind being controlled by a machine world. People in the dream world believing they're alive, but their mind is being controlled. That's where we are. That's why we have to grasp what Allah is saying. Allah is saying he's going to make another heaven and another earth. Meaning that this earth, this heaven we living in now, this is not his creation. This one here was created by men and schemers like Josephus. That's what this whole world we living in. This world has to go. That logic has to go. It's in the minds, it's in everybody's mind subliminally right now. I go in a Christian church and put up a cross, they respond to it. And you know something else? You go in the avenue of Muslims, and put up a star and a crescent, and they respond to it. Why? Because they're governed by the same philosophy. They're governed by that same symbolism. We're not supposed to be controlled by symbolism in no form. But because of the work of men like Josephus, the world is in that kind of mentality. Now certainly, we may not be able to comprehend all of that all at once, because none of us can comprehend like that. At least I can. Maybe some of you can. But if you can, whether you're Christian, Jew, or Muslim, Allah shows you He's most merciful. And He shows in the Quran. Now, a Muslim shouldn't have no argument with the Quran. Allah shows in the Quran. He says, if those who follow the Torah insincere, and those who follow the Injil or follow what Isa taught, they're in here too. And He named other groups. If they are sincere, following their book, their reward is with their Lord. That's merciful. They don't have to know what I just told you, the story of Josephus. But if they're just sincere and follow the book they have, Allah will bless them. Isn't that a merciful God? He knows the scheme that the world is in. But if in your sincerity, in your nature, where He put the nature for you to follow Him, to come to Him, if that nature is in another philosophy that dictates the following of a deity, like God, like in the Torah, He will bless you for being sincere. And that's all the Muslim is being blessed for being sincere. What is religion? The question was asked. Religion is sincerity. Religion is sincerity. But those of us who are awake should be working to bring in, because we're in a new world now. We're in a new time now. We're in a time where the old world is going out. Josephus and his boys are on their way out. And a new time is coming in. A new time is being led by you, conscious-minded people. Conscious-minded people who understand the concept that Allah has put in this Quran. This is the new world. This is the new foundation. The Quran is the foundation of the new world and the new heaven. So with that, we want to take a short pause. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. We simply want to reiterate the power that Allah has put in us. Don't sell that short. Trust that, and trust that beyond anything else. You should trust what Allah put in you more than you trust what a sheikh would say, more than you trust what an imam would say, more than what you trust a so-called scholar would say. You should trust what Allah put in you. That's the Ibrahim mentality. That's the Ibrahim thinking. And Allah instructed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, follow the millah of Ibrahim. He didn't tell him to follow the millah of Job, of Isa, of anybody, of Musa, nobody. He said, follow the millah, the way of Ibrahim. The Hanif, the upright. He had it together. He had it right. And he followed the nature in which I put in him. Trust your nature. Trust that Allah is God and the creator of everything, has made no mistake, and He's your guardian Lord, and He's your guide. He will cause you to flourish. You have nothing to fear. No one to fear. Your Lord and your Lord alone. So we thank Almighty Allah for blessing us to be here this day of Jumuah. And we ask Allah to bless those who were unable to make Jumu'ah today, and those who made Jumu'ah. We ask Allah to give us the best of this world and the hereafter, and protect us from the fire. He cometh to son.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha